Allow me also to express my profound gratitude to Queen Catherine. She has taken remarkable steps to strengthen the partnership between our two nations. I wish her every success in her new role within the British monarchy.
Windsor, December 3rd, 2025, just hours before those golden gates of Windsor Castle swung open for Britain's most high-stakes state banquet in years, Buckingham Palace casually dropped a two-sentence announcement that hit like a quiet thunderclap. The palace didn't bother with build-up or drama. They just delivered the facts with royal coldness, letting the world fill in the tension. His Majesty the King would host the President of the Federal Republic of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and First Lady Elke Budenbender for an official state visit beginning December 3rd, 2025. And the Princess of Wales would play a key role in welcoming the delegation and supporting diplomatic proceedings alongside their Majesties the King and Queen. Nothing flashy on paper, but the subtext already had insiders raising eyebrows. Nobody expected that the night's most explosive headline wouldn't come from Windsor's gilded halls, the polished speeches, or the royal protocol, but straight from the mouth of a seasoned foreign leader. When President Steinmeier rose at 8:43 p.m. to address the guests, he stunned diplomats and sent global media into a frenzy by calling Catherine Queen Catherine, who sits beside me. And he repeated it not once, but twice. It was bold, it was unexpected, and it was a move that practically froze the room. With those words, he skipped right over Queen Camilla and accidentally, maybe intentionally, acknowledged a shift many had whispered about but never dared say outright. This wasn't just a slip. It was a spotlight on a new reality the palace had been dancing around for months, and the timing couldn't have been more shocking as this banquet marked Germany's first official state visit to the UK in nearly 30 years during one of King Charles III's most politically sensitive seasons. Europe is rebuilding alliances after Brexit, NATO tensions are rising in Eastern Europe, and every move between Berlin and London is being watched. Steinmeier's presence wasn't just friendship. It was alignment, strategy, and a quiet political handshake that echoed through Windsor Castle's ancient corridors. The setting was heavy with symbolism. The banquet took place inside St. George's Hall, the iconic space with its massive oak ceiling, centuries-old coats of arms, and a layout designed to remind everyone exactly who holds power. Over 100 high-ranking guests, from military leaders to cultural ambassadors, filled the hall, and the event ran with military precision under the watch of the master of the household. But the star was not the king that night. Every whisper pointed to Catherine. Days before the banquet, palace insiders leaked that the Princess of Wales would be stepping into a higher diplomatic role, one usually reserved for seasoned royals with decades of experience. A source connected to the Lord Chamberlain's office told The Times that Catherine had directly approved seating plans, guest introductions, and even gift protocol. The source said, "She's not just attending, she's executing." And insiders believed it. As the German motorcade rolled into Windsor's inner quadrangle, escorted by the household cavalry in full regalia, Catherine descended the steps beside King Charles like she owned the moment. Wearing a sapphire blue Alexander McQueen gown and the rarely seen Indian circlet tiara, last worn by Queen Elizabeth II in 2005, she looked like someone stepping into a role much bigger than Princess of Wales. Her presence sent cameras into overdrive. Her curtsy to the King and Queen went instantly viral, but her poised handshake with President Steinmeier, followed by a fluent German greeting, left people stunned. That small moment landed like a diplomatic mic drop. The two-day itinerary focused on strengthening UK-German relations during a massive geopolitical shake-up, and Catherine's role grew more visible by the hour. Steinmeier's visit followed King Charles's 2023 trip to Germany, his first overseas journey as monarch, and symbolised new trade paths and NATO commitments, especially around Ukraine, and shared defence strategies. With him came top-tier German officials, Annalena Baerbock, Robert Habeck, and more, representing a powerhouse diplomatic lineup. Meanwhile, the UK delegation included Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Foreign Secretary David Lammy, Chancellor Rachel Reeves, and Defence Secretary John Healey. But all eyes kept drifting back to Catherine, seated at the President's right hand. In royal protocol, that's not a random choice. It's a statement. In St. George's Hall, the horseshoe-shaped table follows strict rules set since Queen Victoria's era. The guest of honour sits beside the monarch, Yet here, Catherine sat directly to the president's left, closer than Queen Camilla, who sat several places down the table. That was a deliberate signal, and everyone in the room knew it. Sources confirmed Catherine personally reviewed the seating layout, and King Charles approved it with the Master of the Household and the Foreign Office. This was authority, not accident. As dinner closed, Windsor pheasant cleared away and glasses topped for the final toast, Steinmeier began what everyone thought would be a standard diplomatic speech. He thanked the king, praised UK-German friendship, and spoke about unity in global challenges. But then he turned slightly left and dropped the line that froze the room spectacularly. He said, "Allow me also to express my profound gratitude to Queen Catherine, who sits beside me. She has taken remarkable steps to strengthen the partnership between our two nations. I wish her every success in her new role within the British monarchy." The silence that followed was electric. Aides exchanged subtle looks. The Prime Minister blinked. Queen Camilla, seated down the table, kept a controlled smile that didn't reach her eyes. King Charles raised his glass but didn't interrupt. Catherine simply inclined her head. Steady, regal, calm, as if she knew exactly how explosive that moment was. Steinmeier kept speaking, unfazed or unbothered by the diplomatic earthquake he'd just created. It wasn't just the phrase Queen Catherine that hit the world. It was the atmosphere surrounding it, the hall, the silence, the cameras, and Catherine sitting impossibly still, not flinching, not glancing toward Charles or Camilla, just grounding the moment like someone who understood power on a new level. But the real message hadn't started with the speech. It began hours earlier, before the toasts, before the music, before the first note of Beethoven's Ode to Joy filled the hall. It was written into Catherine's choice of tiara, a piece not worn publicly since the final years of Queen Elizabeth II. The Indian circlet tiara, commissioned by Prince Albert for Queen Victoria in 1853, is one of the most symbolically powerful jewels in the royal vault, with diamonds, rubies, and lotus motifs representing resilience, rebirth, and feminine strength. The circlet had long been associated with monarchs, not consorts, not princesses. Its return on Catherine and not Camilla was a message dressed in diamonds. Royal stylists confirmed to Tatler that the tiara was removed from vault storage 2 weeks earlier under personal authorization from the keeper of the Privy Purse with King Charles's approval. Meanwhile, Camilla wore the Burmese ruby tiara, a beautiful piece, but traditionally ranked below the Indian circlet in ceremonial weight, and insiders noted it was Camilla's second time wearing it in 2 weeks, hinting at a last-minute shift or rearrangement of jewels. From her sapphire McQueen gown to diamond earrings inspired by Queen Alexandra's 1901 coronation set, Catherine's entire look was strategic, elegant, and powerful, a visual statement crafted for admiration at home and respect on the world stage. Catherine's ensemble was deliberate diplomacy, a visual message designed for both domestic admiration and international respect. Blue dominated the night's palette. Not just any blue, but the colour of the European Union and the United Nations. It also clearly symbolised solidarity with Ukraine, a recurring thread woven through every speech and toast. Most strikingly, Catherine's styling echoed Queen Elizabeth II's 1957 state visit to Germany, remembered as a cornerstone of post-war reconciliation. History was alive in her look, and the visual message was impossible to miss. Royal watchers were quick to draw the parallels. One historian tweeted, "This wasn't Catherine dressing for a dinner. This was Catherine dressing for history." Meanwhile, Queen Camilla maintained her royal composure, but her seating arrangement and the shocking omission from Steinmeier's address were painfully obvious. For a queen consort to be physically distanced from a visiting head of state and then publicly bypassed was virtually unprecedented in modern times. Inside sources from the royal household told The Guardian that Camilla appeared quieter during post-dinner mingling. She remained polite, even graceful, but her focus seemed elsewhere. A seasoned diplomat remarked, "She wasn't angry, but she understood exactly what had just happened." Staffers reportedly began questioning what this might mean for future protocol. Would Camilla continue to lead major state events, or was this quietly the start of a formal transition into a more background role? The first headline hit less than 10 minutes after the final toast. German president calls her queen, Catherine's royal future confirmed, BBC breaking news. By midnight, Queen Catherine was trending worldwide. CNN, Sky News, Dare, Spiegel, and Le Monde all carried variations of the story, from cautious analysis to celebratory speculation. US media framed it as Catherine's global debut, with People magazine calling it a royal soft power masterclass. Royal traditionalists, predictably, were unsettled. One senior political commentator on GB News remarked in frustration, "This is either a monumental diplomatic error or a carefully orchestrated shift in royal priorities, and if the latter is true, the public deserves to know." Yet among younger audiences, especially in the Commonwealth and across Europe, reaction was overwhelmingly positive and enthusiastic. A Snap YouGov poll conducted 24 hours later showed 61% of Britons believed the remark was appropriate or even overdue, while only 18% called it a mistake. Catherine offered no public comment, no press statement, no correction, no clarification. Perhaps the most queenly move of all was her choice to remain silent in the eye of a global storm. The woman at the centre of a media firestorm let her silence speak louder than any words ever could. December 3rd, 2025, may be remembered not just as the night the world first heard Queen Catherine aloud in a formal diplomatic setting, but also as the moment inside the palace walls when the inevitability of her rise became undeniable. It had been a long time coming. For more than a year, whispers had circulated, quiet shifts in responsibilities, Catherine chairing private briefings normally reserved for senior royal aides, and King Charles, still recovering from a string of health complications, gradually pulling back from active statecraft. Slowly but surely, Catherine had stepped into key roles, yet nothing had ever been made official. No public reshuffle, no title adjustments. That was until President Steinmeier, one of Europe's most disciplined statesmen, stood beside the king and used a title no one else had dared utter: Queen Catherine. Observers were struck not only by Steinmeier's words, but by King Charles's response. He did not correct him, did not glance toward Catherine, nor Camilla, nor flinch, nor protest. He simply raised his glass, nodded, and offered a composed, practiced smile. Sources inside the master of the household later confirmed that the king's toast, just minutes prior, had deliberately emphasized continuity, adaptability, and the strength of future leadership. Many now argue that the speech was not just poetic, it was predictive. Charles has long understood that symbolic power often matters more than spoken declarations. Dr. Eleanor Hawthorne, senior fellow in constitutional history, remarked that by allowing Queen Catherine to go unchallenged in front of the world's press, Charles effectively sanctioned the title without ever formally saying a word. Since early 2025, his public appearances had been increasingly limited. Behind closed doors, the monarch was managing a recurring autoimmune condition, confirmed by the palace in March as stable but closely monitored. With Charles's reduced schedule, operational strain on Queen Camilla increased, but visibility of William and Catherine in key roles skyrocketed. From climate summits in Nairobi to UN collaborations in Geneva, Catherine had quietly emerged as the face of British diplomacy. Not just beside her husband, but often in his stead. This German state banquet, one of Britain's most critical post-Brexit economic and defence partnerships, was anything but casual. Every detail, seating, speeches, tiara, gowns, had been meticulously vetted. That is why insiders now believe Steinmeier's speech wasn't a gaffe, but rather a soft rollout of a quietly ongoing transition. Within 72 hours of the banquet, speculation exploded. Many suspected the German president may have been briefed on Catherine's expanded role within the monarchy. The palace officially downplayed the remark as a linguistic formality, possibly misunderstood in translation. Yet sources within the Foreign and Commonwealth Office revealed that a pre-event policy briefing had been circulated to Steinmeier's protocol team. Reportedly, that briefing outlined Catherine's advisory role in foreign affairs, leadership in UK-German education and child welfare collaborations, and executive influence in the Royal Foundation's cross-European initiatives. Nowhere did it title her Queen, but functionally, she had already surpassed traditional formalities. Modern diplomacy often values influence over strict protocol, and Dr. Konrad Feldman, senior advisor to the Bundesrat, suggested the German president simply acknowledged what Catherine already embodied in practice. Throughout the evening, Queen Camilla remained composed, wearing the Burmese ruby tiara and Queen Victoria's sapphire brooch, walking with Charles during the arrival procession and mingling with select diplomats and cultural figures. Yet, unlike previous state banquets, Camilla was neither beside the visiting head of state nor mentioned in the King's or Steinmeier's remarks. Her omission was glaring, further amplified by her placement several seats away from the presidential chair, as a source close to Clarence House confirmed to Vanity Fair. Camilla, insiders say, understands public sentiment and has long accepted her role as stabilizer during royal transitions, not as a leader. Behind closed doors, a quiet agreement seems to have taken hold within the inner circle. She will retain her formal title of Queen Consort, but yield public-facing duties to Catherine, especially on international diplomacy. A move that Camilla herself reportedly supports in private, allowing Catherine's quiet rise to continue unhindered. A move they say that Camilla herself supports at least behind closed doors. Behind the polished images and restrained smiles lies the truth, a family adjusting to shifting power, generational pressure, and relentless public expectation. A confirmed source revealed that after the banquet, a confidential memo circulated through palace departments outlining a new protocol for foreign engagements. Catherine was now listed as the first point of contact for cultural and child welfare diplomacy, followed by the Prince of Wales. While this reshuffle hasn't been formally announced, insiders call it the Windsor Reset, a quiet but undeniable preparation for a new era, and the world had just been given its first glimpse of what's coming. While headlines fixated on President Steinmeier's stunning use of Queen Catherine during the state banquet at Windsor, what few noticed were the hours of deliberate choreography that unfolded long before the speech. These were moves designed for impact, not spectacle. Hours before cameras caught her poised at the German president's right hand beneath St. George's Hall's golden chandeliers, Princess Catherine had already made her diplomatic mark. The woman now widely seen as the monarchy's future had spent the entire day executing a soft power campaign rivaling any official declaration. This wasn't Catherine merely attending a state visit. This was Catherine running it. At precisely 8:45 a.m., the royal standard rose over Windsor Castle, frost glimmered on the cobblestones of the inner quadrangle, and the household cavalry stood in full ceremonial formation. The German state motorcade arrived through the long walk, carrying President Steinmeier, First Lady Elke Budenbender, Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, and German Ambassador Miguel Berger under escort. In past visits, the King and Queen Consort typically greeted the foreign head of state together, but this time it was Catherine joining King Charles on the North Terrace. Palace aides confirmed this had been planned a week in advance, not as substitution, but as a statement of succession. Catherine's attire spoke volumes. She wore a cream coat by Amelia Wickstead, evoking Queen Elizabeth II's 1957 visit to West Germany, paired with a brooch once owned by Princess Alice of Battenberg, Prince Philip's mother, and a revered figure in Anglo-German history. The nod was subtle, symbolic, and powerful. As King Charles shook hands with Steinmeier, Catherine stepped forward to greet the First Lady, offering a brief curtsy and warm smile. She then greeted her in fluent German. "Willkommen in Windsor. Es ist uns eine Ehre." The First Lady beamed, cameras flashed, and across Berlin, newsrooms noticed. Yet the day held quieter, more impactful moments inside Windsor Castle's green drawing room. There, Catherine hosted a roundtable on early childhood development with experts from the Royal Foundation and German representatives from the Bundesministerium für Familie, Senioren, Frauen und Jugend. Participants included Dr. Anke Beimann, child psychologist and German youth policy advisor, Sir Richard Whittington, lead paediatric mental health consultant to NHS England, and Freya Lindner, cultural attaché at the German embassy. Catherine's private secretary, Alice Dawkins, assisted. The discussion focused on youth resilience, post-pandemic mental health, and education parity in underserved areas. Observers later confirmed Catherine led the conversation without note cards, referencing German pilot programs in Hamburg and Royal Foundation outcomes from Birmingham. At the session's close, she presented President Steinmeier with a hand-bound report titled Generational Bridges, Early Years Diplomacy Between the UK and Germany, a policy gift normally exchanged between ministers, not princesses. Later that afternoon, Catherine guided the President and First Lady through the Royal Collection's German Masterworks exhibit, curated specifically for the occasion. Works by Ulrich Rückrim, Caspar David Friedrich, and Gerhard Richter were on display, rare pieces unseen publicly for over a decade. Instead of deferring to curators, Catherine personally narrated key pieces, highlighting shared cultural heritage and contemporary UK-German connections. One Royal Collection insider said, "She doesn't perform, she educates and builds rapport through authenticity." The First Lady, an art historian by training, was visibly moved. While Queen Camilla rested ahead of the banquet, Catherine convened a short meeting with the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office to discuss preparations for the 2026 UK-Germany Youth Leadership Exchange, championed by both the Royal Foundation and Berlin's Youth Parliament. Foreign Secretary David Lammy and several embassy attachés attended. Two FCDO staffers noted Catherine's presence added credibility, and her detailed engagement suggested she was already operating at a head of state adjacent level well before changing into her gala attire. Catherine was later seen briefly at St George's Chapel with a single aide, no press, no photographers, just a 5-minute pause at the side altar used by Queen Elizabeth II for private reflection. No words were spoken, but the symbolism was unmistakable. Hours later, when Catherine took her seat beside President Steinmeier, directly to his right, not across, not diagonally, the message was clear. Every carefully orchestrated step of her day had led to this position. This was not a seating accident. It was the culmination of deliberate, rehearsed diplomacy. By midnight, headlines exploded worldwide. A princess, a president, and a single moment that rewrote centuries of protocol. Windsor had whispered its future. Catherine had not declared herself, yet the world had noticed. The woman once nicknamed Weighty Katie had become something entirely new, the embodiment of sovereign modernity. Applause echoed through the stone arches of St George's Hall. Glasses clinked softly, blending into polite chatter, and every observer knew a new chapter had begun. As applause echoed through the stone arches of St George's Hall and clinking glasses softened into polite chatter, Queen Camilla remained seated, her expression perfectly composed into what seasoned observers call pleasantly detached. She had just witnessed one of the most jarring symbolic shifts in modern royal memory, a foreign head of state publicly referring to another woman as queen, while she, the official queen consort, was never once acknowledged by name. Yet Camilla did not flinch because in royal life, silence is not surrender, it's armor, and experience has taught her that patience often speaks louder than protest. Make no mistake, Camilla saw everything. By all accounts, she played her part flawlessly throughout the evening. Arriving on the king's arm, wearing the Burmese ruby tiara with a matching sapphire brooch from Queen Victoria's collection, she took her place at the banquet in a deep navy gown by Anna Valentine, echoing the royal blue theme chosen by both Catherine and the German First Lady at the reception. She navigated the room with quiet authority, acknowledging dignitaries with measured nods and soft smiles that concealed a mind fully aware of every nuance. She engaged effortlessly with German cultural envoys and British business leaders. During dinner, she conversed with Deputy Chancellor Robert Beck and UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves, laughing lightly at a well-timed anecdote about Bavarian wines. And yet, she was not seated near the German president, nor included in any official mention, not even as a symbolic nod. One palace observer summed it up bluntly. She was present, but she was not central, a reminder that influence in the monarchy is often invisible, but no less powerful. After guests departed and the corridors of Windsor quieted, Camilla returned to Clarence House with the king. No formal debrief took place, but aides close to the Queen confirmed a private conversation behind closed doors. One senior staff member, speaking anonymously, described the moment as quietly charged. The Queen didn't raise her voice, didn't accuse anyone. She asked a single question. Was that briefed, King Charles, known for his detail-oriented nature, reportedly assured her that President Steinmeier's speech had not been pre-approved with that wording. What he did not show, insiders say, was indignation. He wasn't shocked nor offended that Camilla saw everything unfold. For Camilla, who has worked tirelessly for 2 decades to serve the crown, rehabilitate her image, and support Charles through scandal, illness, and transition, the moment was more than a snub. It was a signal. Her chapter, while not closing, was receding. A long career of measured leadership and diplomacy has prepared her for this quieter, yet still crucial stage in her life. To say Camilla is being phased out would be inaccurate. The Queen Consort's role is not being stripped. It's being reshaped. Since Charles ascended in 2023, Camilla has taken on over 120 public engagements annually. She has led literacy programs through the Queen's Reading Room, patronaged domestic abuse charities, and health foundations. But as King Charles's health demanded a lighter workload, palace strategists quietly divided responsibilities across 3 pillars: Charles for constitutional duties and state, William for generational outreach and modernization, Catherine for diplomacy and soft power. Camilla's name, notably, no longer appears on some overseas planning briefs, including the 2026 Commonwealth Cultural Tour, now jointly led by William and Catherine. An insider at the Lord Chamberlain's office described the shift as a graceful glide into senior advisory positioning. Observers compared it to Queen Mary's reduced but revered role in the 1930s, or Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother's post-1952 transition. Public opinion hasn't always favoured Camilla. In the 1990s, her approval rating hovered below 20%, but years of quiet dedication raised her favourability to 43% by mid-2025, according to YouGov. Meanwhile, Catherine's favourability sits at 71%, boosted by appearances alongside NATO leaders, G7 climate panels, and early childhood summits, earning her international recognition. The contrast in perception underscores the generational shift within the monarchy and the public's appetite for visible, modern leadership. Following the banquet, #Camilla snubbed briefly trended before being overtaken by #Queen Catherine and viral clips of Steinmeier's speech. One post summed it up. Camilla brought history. Catherine brought the future. Windsor just blinked. What remains most fascinating about Camilla is not her reaction, but her restraint. She has not leaked, complained, or altered her public schedule. Instead, she continues to support Charles, uphold her patronages, and maintain unity with William and Catherine. But sources close to her circle say she has never been unaware. The crown, she knows, is not a reward. It's a relay. A friend of the Queen confirmed she ran her part with dignity and now she passes the baton. On December 5th, just 2 days after the banquet, palace sources confirmed a new delegation structure for 2026. While Charles remains head of state, Catherine will lead more than half of all diplomatic engagements, especially involving Commonwealth youth, climate strategy, and global education. Queen Camilla is expected to transition into domestic ceremonial roles, including patronages, events, historical preservation, and private advisory functions. It's not exile, it's evolution. As one royal aide put it, Camilla is not being erased. She's being absorbed into legacy. The spotlight moves on, but she helped build the stage. No crown was placed on her head. No title was formally announced. But for millions across Europe, the Commonwealth and Palace walls, December 3rd, 2025, felt like a coronation in all but name. Princess Catherine, seated beside the German president, dressed in sapphire and diamonds, spoke little. She did not respond to the words, Queen Catherine. She did not claim the moment, but she did not retreat either. That is where her power now lies. By saying nothing, she lets the world speak for her. By not correcting the German president, she allowed the truth beneath the slip to surface, embodying steadiness, diplomacy, and relevance. Catherine redefined what it means to rise in a modern monarchy, through trust, not titles, through responsibility, not rank. King Charles remains sovereign, Camilla remains consort, but within the court, Parliament, and public eye, a new axis has formed. William is heir, Catherine is the heartbeat, and what unfolded inside Windsor's gilded halls was not a misstep in protocol, but a revelation of the inevitable. This was the moment the world saw her, not just as Princess of Wales, but as the Queen. the future was already waiting for. If you loved this inside look at Windsor, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment below. Who do you think truly runs the monarchy behind the scenes? Let's talk.